As he set foot upon the far bank of Silverlode, a strange feeling had come on him, and it deepened as he walked on into the Nath. It seemed to him that he had stepped over a bridge of time, into a corner of the elder days, and was now walking in a world that was no more. In Rivendell there was memory of ancient things. In Lorien, the ancient things still lived on in the waking world. Evil had been seen and heard there. Sorrow had been known. And the elves feared and distrusted the world outside. Wolves were howling on the woods' borders, but on the land of Lorien no shadow lay. All that day the company marched on, until they felt the cool evening come and heard the early night wind whispering among many leaves. And then they rested and slept without fear upon the ground, for their guides would not permit them to unbind their eyes, and they could not climb. In the morning they went on again, walking without haste. At noon they halted, and Frodo was aware that they had passed out under the shining sun, and suddenly he heard the sound of many voices all around him. A marching host of elves had come up silently. They were hastening towards the northern borders to guard against any attack from Moria, and they brought news, some of which Haldir reported. The marauding orcs had been waylaid, and almost all destroyed. The remnant had fled westward towards the mountains and were being pursued. A strange creature also had been seen running with bent back and with hands near the ground, like a beast, and yet not of beast shape. It had eluded capture, and they had not shot it, not knowing whether it was good or ill, and had vanished down the Silverlode southward.
Also, said Haldir, they bring me a message from the Lord and Lady of the Galadrim. You are all to walk free, even the dwarf Gimli. It seems that the lady knows who and what is each member of your company. New messages have come from Rivendell, perhaps.
He removed the bandage first from Gimli's eyes.
Your pardon,
he said, bowing low.
Look on us now with friendly eyes. Look and be glad, for you are the first dwarf to behold the trees of the Nath of Lorien since Durin's day.
When his eyes were in turn uncovered, Frodo looked up and caught his breath. They were standing in an open space. To the left stood a great mound covered with a sward of grass, as green as springtime in the elder days. And upon it, as a double crown, grew two circles of trees. The outer had bark of snowy white, and were leafless but beautiful in their shapely nakedness. The inner were melon trees of great height, still arrayed in pale gold. High amid the branches of a towering tree that stood in the center of all, there gleamed a white flet. And at the feet of the trees and all about the green hillsides, the grass was studded with small golden flowers shaped like stars. Among them, nodding on slender stalks, were other flowers, white and palest green. They glimmered as a mist amid the rich hue of the grass. Over all the sky was blue, and the sun of afternoon glowed upon the hill and cast long green shadows beneath the trees.
Behold, you are come to Seren Amroth, said Haldir. For this is the heart of the ancient realm, as it was long ago. And here is the mound of Amroth, where in happier days his high house was built. Here ever bloom the winter flowers, in the unfading grass, the yellow Eleanor, and the pale Nifridel. Here we stay a while, and come to the city of the Galadrim at dusk.
The others cast themselves down upon the fragrant grass, but Frodo stood a while, still lost in wonder. It seemed to him that he had stepped through a high window that looked on a vanished world. A light was upon it, for which his language had no name. All that he saw was shapely, but the shape seemed at once clear-cut, as if they had first been conceived and drawn at the uncovering of his eyes, and ancient, as if they had endured forever. He saw no color, but those he knew, gold and white and blue and green. But they were fresh and poignant, as if he had at that moment first perceived them, and made for them names new and wonderful. In winter here no heart could mourn for summer or for spring. No blemish, or sickness, or deformity could be seen in anything that grew upon the earth. On the land of Lorien there was no stain. He turned and saw that Sam was now standing beside him, looking round with a puzzled expression, and rubbing his eyes as if he was not sure that he was awake. It's sunlight, and bright day, right enough, he said. I thought that elves were all for moon and stars, but this is more elvish than anything I ever heard tell of. I feel as if I was inside a song, if you take my meaning. Haldir looked at them, and he seemed indeed to take the meaning of both thought and word. He smiled.
You feel the power of the Lady of the Galadrim. Would it please you to climb with me up Seren Amroth?
They followed him as he stepped lightly up the grass-clad slopes. Though he walked and breathed, and about him living leaves and flowers were stirred by the same cool wind as fanned his face, Frodo felt that he was in a timeless land that didn't fade or change or fall into forgetfulness. When he had gone and passed again into the outer world, still Frodo, the wanderer from the Shire, would walk there upon the grass among Elnor and Nifridel, in fair Lothlorien. They entered the circle of white trees, and as they did so, the south wind blew upon Seren Amroth and sighed among the branches. Frodo stood still, hearing far off great seas upon beaches that had long ago been washed away, and seabirds crying, whose race had perished from the earth. Haldir had gone on, and was now climbing to the high flat, and as Frodo prepared to follow him, he laid his hand upon the tree beside the ladder. Never before had he been so suddenly and so keenly aware of the feel and texture of a tree's skin, and of the life within it. He felt a delight in wood and the touch of it. Neither as forester nor as carpenter, it was the delight of the living tree itself. As he stepped out at last upon the lofty platform, Haldir took his hand and turned him towards the south.
Look this way first,
he said. Frodo looked and saw, still at some distance, a hill of many mighty trees, or a city of green towers. Which it was, he couldn't tell. Out of it seemed to him that the power and light came that held all the land in sway. He longed suddenly to fly like a bird to rest in the green city. Then he looked eastward and saw all the land of Lorien running down to the pale gleam of Anduin, the great river. He lifted his eyes across the river, and all the light went out, and he was back again in the world he knew. Beyond the river the land appeared flat and empty, formless and vague, until far away it rose again like a wall, dark and drear. The sun that lay on Lothlorien had no power to enlighten the shadow of that distant height.
There lies the fastness of southern Mirkwood,
said Halder.
It is clad in a forest of dark fir, where the trees strive one against another, and their branches rot and wither. In the midst upon a stony height stands Dol Guldur, where long the hidden enemy had his dwelling. We fear that it is inhabited again, and with power sevenfold. A black cloud lies often over it of late. In this high place you may see the two powers that are opposed to one another, and ever they strive now in thought. But whereas the light perceives the very heart of the darkness, its own secret has not been discovered, not yet.
He turned and climbed swiftly down, and they followed him. At the hill's foot Frodo found Aragorn, standing still and silent as a tree, but in his hand was a small golden bloom of Elenor, and a light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him he knew that he beheld things as they once had been in this same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord, tall and fair, and he spoke words in the Elvish tongue, to one whom Frodo could not see. Arwen, Benamilda, Nemeri, he said, and then he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought he looked at Frodo and smiled. Here is the heart of Elvendom on earth, he said, and here my heart dwells ever. Unless there be a light beyond the dark roads that we still must tread, you and I, come with me. And taking Frodo's hand in his, he left the hill of Seren Amroth, and came there never again as a living man. Well, that's that chapter. Wow. Description, can you see it?
Did you like this one?
Oh, that's fun. I love doing voices. It's lots of fun. Chapter 7 coming next, and we'll read it the next time. It's called The Mirror of Galadriel. So don't miss that. You can look in the mirror of Galadriel. Hi, this is Ray Monsolder. We are in Chapter 7 of the Fellowship of the Ring, The Mirror of Galadriel. But just before we do that, I want to go back to just the end of the last chapter, because it was so beautifully written that I thought I'd like to read that again. At the hill's foot, Frodo found Aragorn, standing still and silent as a tree, but in his hand was a small golden bloom of Elenor, and a light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him he knew that he beheld things as they once had been in this same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord tall and fair, and he spoke words in the Elvish tongue, to one whom Frodo could not see. Arwen, Benamelda, Namari, he said, and then he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought he looked at Frodo and smiled. Here is the heart of Elvendom on earth, he said, and here my heart dwells ever. Unless there be a light beyond the dark roads that we still must tread, you and I, come with me. And taking Frodo's hand in his, he left the hill of Seren Amroth, and came there, never again, as living man. Chapter 7, The Mirror of Galadriel. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, and the shadows were deepening in the woods, when they went out on again. Their paths now went into thickets, where the dusk had already gathered. Night came beneath the trees as they walked, and the elves uncovered their silver lamps. Suddenly they came out into the open again and found themselves under a pale evening sky pricked by a few early stars. There was a wide, treeless space before them, running in a great circle and bending away on either hand, and beyond it was a deep foss lost in soft shadow, but the grass upon its brink was green, as if it glowed still in memory of the sun that had gone. Upon the further side there rose to a great height a green wall, encircling a green hill, thronged with melon trees, taller than any they had yet seen in all the land. Their height could not be guessed, but they stood up in the twilight like living towers. In their many-tiered branches and amid their ever-moving leaves, countless lights were gleaming, green and gold and silver. Halder turned towards the company.
Welcome to Garash Galadon. Here is the city of Galadrim, where dwell the Lord Celebron and Galadriel, the Lady of Lorien. But we cannot enter here, for the gates do not look northward. We must go round to the southern side, and the way is not short, for the city is great.
There was a road paved with white stone running on the other brink of the foss, and along this they went westward, with the city ever climbing up like a green cloud upon their left. And as the night deepened, more light sprang forth, until all the hills seemed afire with stars. They came at last to a white bridge, and crossing found the great gates of the city. They faced southwest, set between the ends of the encircling wall that here overlapped, and they were tall and strong, and hung with many lamps. Halder knocked and spoke, and the gates opened soundlessly. But of guards, Frodo could see no sign. The travelers passed within, and the gates shut behind them. They were in a deep lane between the ends of the wall, and passing quickly through it, they entered the city of the trees. No folk could they see, nor hear any feet upon the paths, but there were many voices about them, and in the air above, far away up on the hill, they could hear the sound of singing, falling from on high, like soft rain upon leaves. They went along many paths and climbed many stairs, until they came to the high places, and saw before them, amid a wide lawn, a fountain shimmering. It was lit by silver lamps that swung from the boughs of trees. and it fell into a basin of silver, from which a white stream spilled. Upon the south side of the lawn there stood the mightiest of all the trees. Its great smooth bole gleamed like gray silk, and up it towered until its first branches, far above, opened their huge limbs under shadowy clouds of leaves. Beside it a broad white ladder stood, and at its foot 3 elves were seated. They sprang up as the travelers approached, and Frodo saw that they were tall and clad in gray mail, and from their shoulders hung long white cloaks.
Here dwell Celebrone and Galadriel, said Halder. It is their wish that you should ascend and speak with them.
One of the elf wardens then blew a clear note on a small horn, and it was answered 3 times from far above.
I will go first, said Halder. Let Frodo come next, and with him Legolas. The others may follow as they wish. It's a long climb for those that are not accustomed to such stairs, but you may rest upon the way.
As it climbed slowly up, Frodo passed many flats, some on one side, some on another, and some set about the bole of the tree, so that the ladder passed through them. At a great height above the ground he came to a wide talon, like the deck of a great ship. On it was built a house, so large that almost it would have served for a hall of men upon the earth. He entered behind Halder and found that he was in a chamber of oval shape, in the midst of which grew the trunk of the great melon, now tapering towards its crown, and yet making still a pillar of wide girth. The chamber was filled with a soft light. Its walls were green and silver, and its roof of gold. Many elves were seated there on 2 chairs beneath the bole of the tree, and canopied by a living bough. There sat side by side Celeborn and Galadriel. They stood up to greet the guests, after the manner of elves, even those who were accustomed and accounted mighty kings. Very tall they were, and the lady no less tall than the lord, and they were grave and beautiful. They were clad wholly in white, and the hair of the lady was of deep gold, and the hair of the lord Celeborn was of silver, long and bright, but no sign of age was upon them, unless it were in the depths of their eyes, for these were keen as lances in the starlight, and yet profound, the wells of deep memory. Halder led Frodo before them, and the lord welcomed him in his own tongue. The lady Galadriel said no word, but looked long upon his face. Sit down beside my chair, Frodo of the Shire, said Celeborn. When all have come, we will speak together. Each of the companions he greeted courteously by name as they entered. Welcome, Aragorn, son of Arathorn. He said, it was 38 years of the world outside since you came to this land, and those years lie heavy on you. But the end is near, for good or ill. Here, lay aside your burden for a while. Welcome, son of Thranduil. Too seldom do my kindred journey hither from the north. Welcome, Gimli, son of Gloin. It is long indeed since we saw one of Durin's folk in Caras Gladon, but today we've broken our long law. May it be a sign that though the world is now dark, better days are at hand, and that friendship shall be renewed between our peoples. Gimli bowed low. When all the guests were seated before his chair, the Lord looked at them again. Here there are 8, he said. 9 were to set out, so said the messages, but maybe there's been some change of counsel that we've not heard. Elrond is far away, and darkness gathers between us, and all this year the shadows have grown longer. Nay, there was no change of counsel, said the Lady Galadriel, speaking for the first time. Her voice was clear and musical, but deeper than